Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Heroes Podcast 64 with our co-host, with my co-host, the real Pete Kirkwood. My name is Ryan G from Align the Strategy, the real Pete Kirkwood, your success maker, your kingmaker, your empire builder. Pete, today's topic is...
Today's topic is a hero's patience. Because, well, the reality is I love speaking on a topic that resonates with me. And in the last week or so, patience has been something I've had my focus on because I think it might be one of the most underutilized skills, especially in our modern day and age, which is all about rush, 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 haste, 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 push, push, push. A lot of fear-based stuff out there, and if you're dealing from a fear-based emotional place, patience is definitely not the first option that often comes to mind. So a lot of that ability to just sort of take a measured approach to something and have patience in the way that you deal with it, it's just not considered enough. And I find that the more patience I acquire, it is almost like a superpower. Because if I take the time to do something right and I do it patiently, it's almost always better. This little piece here that I'm talking about patience at the moment, I'm making the effort to choose what I'm saying very carefully. And so I'm speaking slightly slower than if I was fighting to get the words out in a room of people who are all having a discussion, where everyone's trying to make an input, right? I've been in a lot of those lately. But in this forum,
right,
discussing on this platform, right, Ryan, you know how to go back and forth in a measured conversation, and we can take our time to make sure that we speak clearly and precisely using specific language to talk about the subjects we're discussing, to make sure the nuance and the specific detail is conveyed, which results in better communication because we're doing it patiently. And
makes sense.
I think that patience of a hero, that being able to slow everything down, is one of the greatest skills, because it operates on a frequency and a vibrational level that just screams safety, security, certainty to your entire environment. If I have the patience to walk through a room, it says so much more about how comfortable I feel in that moment. If that room is on fire and there are explosions, there are gunshots and people dying, holy shit, you look like a superhero out of a movie. All of a sudden, just because you walked through a room. Like, it's just so abnormal to how someone would react in that moment, where they would be very frantically trying to not get shot, exploded, or whatever the fuck's going on. And that's an extreme example, but you can take that all the way back to when you look at people having a conversation in a room. And the people who are like hastily desperate to try and get something said and across are not treated the same as the people who just patiently don't really care if someone has to listen to what they say or not. People kind of go, well, hang on, you're not trying to force your ideas. What did you have to say? Why aren't you trying to force ideas here? And that change in the environment, in the behavior, it all stems from patience. I could go on and on and on about this, but I'm sure you've got some thoughts where you see in your personal life or professional life where that patience really serves you well, Ryan.
True. Let's agree that patience is a tool to be used. It is not simply an emotion, it is an action. It's a deliberate action towards getting a very specific result.
It's a decision. Agreed.
And because if it's a decision, you have to learn to change your way of being. And as a business and data professional, it's in my job to be very patient when dealing with customers, clients, users of certain tools, users of certain platforms, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to figure out, is what he is stating simply a symptom, or are we talking about the true root cause? And in order to dig out whatever is getting in the way of doing his job, getting in the way of making more money, getting in the way of servicing the client as best as we can. And by client, I mean our shared client.
Mhm.
I need to help figure that out.
Absolutely.
And it requires patience and thought. Because as I'm writing down whatever is being stated, I need to put myself in the shoes of another, not only to sympathize, but also learn to look through his lens and understand from his perspective what is needed.
Yes,
And that requires patience, but it also stimulates patience. I
it
cannot
does.
have patience without at least some empathy.
I like that.
Because I didn't have empathy, I would be very robotic,
Mhm.
very disingenuous, even if I'm patient. So let's not just talk about patience, but what can aid our patience. What it also aids the patient is my vision towards solving the problem. As long as the water is murky, I don't know what fish is swimming. I need to be patient as the murk flows down to the bottom
Mhm.
and wait until the fish come out to play again. And if I'm smart, use very specific wording to trigger certain responses. For instance, how do you feel about ABC? How do you feel about ABC could lead me into a plethora of directions. How do you feel about the tools you're using? And I'm expecting either complaints or some positive feedback. But at the very least, learning to understand how they use the tooling,
Mhm.
how they monitor the sales, how they monitor the marketing, how the IT systems affect behavior. Because let's say you're a hero, right? And you're making use of a certain animal. The animal is
Oh,
still an
I
animal.
can make the example right here. Look, we have the
Look,
certain animal.
a mantis. Can't really see it, but it's a mantis.
Come on, focus on the mantis. But the thing I love about the mantis, right, is it is so patient. Like you can see him walking around on there, but he moves real quick, but he'll just sit and he'll wait for the opportunity to strike.
Well, it's an
And I
ambush
recently
predator.
exactly, exactly. And when you realize the skill of an ambush predator, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to take an opportunity that comes across your path in life. Don't get me wrong. But being able to wait for the right moment to leap on that opportunity. The mantis knows to go hang out on the flower because that's where the insect's going to come. So they're all walking around my room at the moment looking for flowers. Right? There's no other insects in my room anymore. That's fantastic. But there's stack loads of them that have barely moved more than a meter since where they hatched 3-4 days ago. And there's probably 50 of them that are still living within that meter squared of window and curtain sort of area because they're patient. They're
Right.
not in a rush. And it blew me away because I expected them all to be gone within a day or two.
Right.
But no, they're everywhere. And it's fascinating watching the way they interact with the world, because it gives us a reference for how quickly we do things. When you look at this little guy here, like, he's interacting with the world, but he's doing it in a very measured way, versus you look at the way people are so panicked, frightened, emotionally driven, all of that stuff. And man, I love these little guys, eh? I've started to see the difference. I've started to see the difference in my communication and my beingness when I go for the patient approach, because it's very easy to react to the energy that another human gives you, right? And as a hero, a lot of the times in stories, that is what creates the drama. That's what makes it exciting. That's what captures our interest and attention.
Mm-hmm.
But often in our day-to-day life, the character that generates the awe-inspiring presence is often the villain. And the villain does the opposite, where the villain is so cool and so big and so tough that when someone goes, "Fuck you, man, I'm going to kill you and I'm all your family," rah, rah, he stands there and goes,
Yeah.
and that patience speaks security, safety, strength,
True.
certainty.
True. Absolutely true. On that note, you often see this with the high-level businessmen, usually the ones that have been through the grind, to the men especially, and the women of course, that have been through on the front lines, through the trenches, build a company, lost investments, and still decide to continue on this path regardless of what happens. It takes an insane amount of patience and probably even insanity do the work that they have to do. I mean, even with
Well,
our businesses, we see how much patience we need to have day by day, grinding in and out. And it takes a very, Jared, welcome to the call. It takes a lot of time to build a business.
it does.
It takes a lot of time to talk with clients. It takes a lot of time to talk with prospects. And even takes a lot of time to further improve the product by testing it on current patients, let's say. And every client has a different issue. Every opponent has a different problem to solve. And you need to be patient and measured, like the mantis. Which brings me to the next point. If we are to define success, you need to have patience for it. It will
You
not
do.
come today. And it goes back all the way back to that famous quote of opportunity means preparation. Preparation literally means having patience while doing the work.
Yes. And the key is that patience is different to waiting, because
Yeah.
when you think of waiting, right, I think of like a waiting room. And in a waiting room, there's a bunch of magazines and things to keep you distracted and to pass time. Patience is a state of readiness and observation, waiting for the moment to strike. The mantis is not smelling the fucking flower, it's waiting for the insect to turn up patiently, which means it's focused on the task of being there for the insect to turn up. And when you think about patience, patience implies that something is happening as well after a period of time. So the truly patient can sit there motionless for a very long time before suddenly striking. And that
Exactly.
calls to mind that archetype of the businessman you're talking about, who has been through so many business deals over so many years that he recognizes all of the facts, the figures, the body language, the propositions, the pitches, and everything, and he can patiently sit there. Think Mark Cuban on Shark Tank, waiting, strike. Here's my deal, here's my pitch, here's my offer.
Exactly.
And that beingness is not just in a businessman. You find exactly the same patience in someone who actually said fucking they were going to be here on the podcast and they've probably got caught up with work, missed the time, in a tradesperson where they can wait their turn to do their job for that project, and then they're out again, right? Because they can't do it till everyone else has ticked off their box, and then it's their turn to step in and do that part of the process, and then they're out. So they're very ordered, they're very measured, they're very patient, and they're quick, they're on form, they're striking. They're not hurried, they're not rushed. They can sit there and do nothing, waiting for the right moment, observing the passing of time, looking for the right moment. I almost don't want to say waiting for it, right? Waiting is shorthand for saying passing time by observing it, looking for the correct moment to act. That action is what defines that patience. So you see it in the mantis, and you see it in the businessman, you see it in many professions. And something that really settled for me earlier this week when I discussed the story about how things went down over the weekend at the party here, where I had to display a lot of patience. But I also demonstrated my ability to act on the moment that there was something in the environment when someone crossed a boundary of mine, right? They left my door open because we're preserving temperature. And Arash saw in that moment that ability for me to just feed the line on the fishing reel and let it go, 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 but do it in a way that I'm just waiting for something to say to me, it's the moment to go. And when it's the moment to go, I know it's the moment to go. And the thing that Arash said to me, what he said to me, other people wouldn't have heard it. But what I heard and what it translated to me as, Pete, you know the moment to go. And for a long time, what I've been doing is going, but do I know the moment or not? And now I've done it and he's pointed it out to me and I'm like, fuck, I do know the moment. And what's happened is all of a sudden that patience has fallen in. And now there's no anxiety. Now there's no anxiousness. Now there's no restlessness. Now there's no, like, all of these other emotions, which are generally a background. Fuck, I'm running out of time. You know, how are things going? Like, what's this and where's that and who's where and where's where, all that kind of stuff. That chatter has ceased because I've become certain in my beingness. Now, if I go start doing something that I'm not certain about, that chatter starts to come back.
That makes sense.
But when I'm focusing on an area of currently where people are socially in my environment, like physically and socially, and how that measures. Like I know where everyone on this property is because I'm keeping an eye on my window and I've noticed who's walked past and I can hear. So I know when people transition from over there to over there because I've got an eye out that window and I can hear when they move through that side of the house. So I know where everyone is. That's not even remotely anxiety inducing for me because it comes so naturally because of that certainty. And in that environment, when we had a party and there were 40 people here or whatever, and I was like, why are the lights on in my room? So I come in the room and there were fantastic gifts for me awaiting. The thing that I'm finding is a lot of the time now I've got the patience, and what will happen is if something pops up and I'm like, there's something here, but I don't know what, and I'm not sure how to do something on it. For example, I added someone on Facebook and they accepted straight away. And it was like, yeah, and we had a fantastic interaction, but it was quite specific. And it'd be almost weird to bring it up in a conversation again. Like, how do I randomly bring up a deep conversation we had about your family in casual conversation? It just doesn't make sense.
No.
So
It's very similar to music and fighting. Because
yes,
in and dancing even, if let's say you have a very specific type of music, let's say salsa or classical ballroom dancing, if you misstep and you miss the beat, you're off. It's the same
exactly.
thing with speaking. If we're talking about a very specific topic and all of a sudden you change it, it feels off. Now, it can be used strategically to deliberately move the conversation towards something else, but it does feel like there's a break and you can almost measure it.
It does. And the dancing example is fantastic because a perfect example of a dancer who has the patience and the skill
Mhm.
is when he misses that step, right? Because he gets distracted or his partner stumbles or whatever the fuck, he patiently flows into the next step he can pick up and keep going.
Right.
And the majority of people don't notice. It's not a problem. It doesn't really put a disruption in anything. And a few people might be like, oh, he tripped, but he's still going. It doesn't stop the dance, right? It carries on. And the story keeps going. And in very much the same way, I had that moment where I was like, there's something here.
Mhm.
Right now, nothing's coming to me about what to do with it. Like, I want to say something to this person, but I don't have anything to say. So I'll
Right.
be patient. And as I sat back patiently, things unfolded, and all of a sudden, something came to me, and then I did have a reason to carry on that conversation. And my communication was very correct because of the patience.
Right.
Because the off code thing, the impatient thing would have been like, man, I just want to talk to this person. So I would have just spoken to them because for the sake of talking.
Right.
But in my reality, I went, well, I've got things to do, they've got things to do, and the rest of it. Like, so I'm not going to talk to them unless I have a reason to talk to them.
Uh-huh.
And then that changed the interaction, and that creates a more genuine moment. And that patience shows up. So it doesn't matter if it's, well, actually, it always matters. When you're interacting with other people, having patience and dealing with them always works in your favor. To let the moment hang, because the person who's able to be okay and to let a moment go versus the other person who feels awkward, which one's in control? Which one holds the power? So in
Mm.
that moment where you can just be like, no, that's so much more powerful than no. The pause, the sigh, the holding the face, the posture, the body language, all of that, that patience to say, what do I want to say? I want to say no, is so much more effective in your communication. And that's why the hero does the right thing, because he makes sure he does the right thing. He takes the time necessary to do the right thing. That's the patience of a hero.
That
You
makes
have to
sense.
take the time to do the right thing, not more than, not less than, but that balance. And as long as you flow into the next right thing that you see, right, and you
Mhm.
keep in flow and in the zone, as we've also been speaking about this week,
Mhm.
your patience will just be an asset,
Mhm.
right?
Very
Like
true.
courage, courage not well balanced is just rushing and getting yourself killed.
That's
Patience
reckless.
not well, exactly. Patience not well balanced is just doing nothing.
A perfect
So
example is hunting. in
Yes.
whatever form, be it hunting for uh, good prospects, hunting for food, whatever. If I was, or if we as hunters were impatient, we will not be catching anything. This is a folklore story about hunters where if in that day I did not catch meat, it is in my right to stay there until I
Mm.
do. It is very much part of the Amor Fati way of life, where yes, it is uncomfortable now, but it doesn't have to be uncomfortable tomorrow and
Correct.
the day after. It is that I choose if I want the meat. And the deer, I might have missed it or there's something happened. I need to take that risk and be patient. Don't
Mhm.
jump to the gun. Stay in a position where the wind does not affect you and be patient. Because there will come a moment where the universe will call upon you to take action. In this context, it would be that the day will arrive. As is the universe if giving you an opportunity to choose. Stay hungry, go home empty-handed, and have to look at your child, your wife, your tribe in the eyes and say you fucked up, but you did your best, and still be okay with that, mind you. Or may the opportunity present itself. You still need to choose patience. Aim, control your breath, release. And the moment it hits, the real work begins. But you might have to chase it, track its blood, be patient. Then the work continues because after the deer dies, it falls on the ground, and you clean up the deer so that you could carry it home. You deliver it the heart, remove what is not usual, check for parasites, blah, blah, blah. And even after you bring it home, there's still more work to be done because you can't immediately eat all of it.
Correct.
But you can see with every step, he decides to be a professional because with being a professional, you have to have patience. It is part of being a good businessman. All business is a people business. I don't care if you're in security, if you're in IT, if you're in finance, whatever, even administration or space agencies. It's still a business. And because if it is a business and we're dealing with people, it's always going to be a people's business. And with people, you need to have patience. Should you want to have the problem solved, should you want to have a good reputation, should you want to have that social proof that you not only have the skills to solve the problem, but the backing of fans. It takes character to consistently solve specific problems.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah, it does. Like it's interesting because when you talk about the patience to go through the process required, I think about what I do, right? Like I'm essentially a mechanic for people's brains. I work on their personality and their self and their beingness and how they live their life and everything they think that they are, right? Their entire head internally to help them get to a better version of themselves that they want. right? I live with a mechanic who does it to cars, fixes things that are broken, and he puts mods on and increases performance to cars that people want that, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's the same process.
Uh-huh.
There's a very different distinction. Is he gets to turn the car off to work on it. I can only work on someone who's still running. So when that engine comes spinning around and that piece comes flying out and smacks me in the head, that's something that's just part of the process I have to deal with because I can't turn the thing off.
Yeah,
So I'm going to get emotionally abused and all this kind of shit just
of course.
because, you know, when you're working on someone and they have a muscle spasm and it kicks out the side, it's not like they meant to kick you. It's just part of the process of going through and triggering a muscle spasm.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's where that patience to deal with that comes through. Because I've got to be able to keep my cool and keep my head in the situations where I have someone turning around and saying, you know, look, I fucking hate you, you're the fucking enemy, like, you know, well, obviously you're a fucking scumbag, like whatever. They're trying to hurt you because they're just in that emotional state, and you have to be like,
Yeah.
this isn't even you I'm talking to.
Yeah.
You
It
know?
reminds me of the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Mhm.
It, or more specifically, one of his other books, The Untethered Soul. I might reread it today, where he goes over the question of who we truly are. Are we our bodies? Are we our this? Are we our that? And as he continues to talk or write about his own experiences with Zen Buddhism, life in general, and how he built his, $1 million businesses, you start to realize that he started out as nothing more than a humble yogi,
Mhm.
an amateur yogi, even, and then he slowly built up something from becoming a carpenter to becoming one of the old school IT professionals.
Mhm.
And you start to realize, wait a minute, indeed, whatever obstacle comes, it's part of the process of growth.
Right.
And it's twofold. Let's assume the universe wants the best for us, yeah? That implies that whatever obstacle comes my way is either meant as training material, is either meant to improve my character, is either meant to practice patience, etc., etc., etc. So it's as if it's medicine for wherever ails me. It's one of those Ruby quotes where there is pain, there's the answer. And often that's true in business as well, where we're hurting, there is an opportunity to improve upon. So in life, if you're frustrated with something, write it down and really ask if you were a professional in this field, what would be the most simplest answer? And often the answer is evident. Now, if you want to do it even more formulaic, I would almost use plan, do, check, act. You plan to not only become more aware of the problem, but actually get the help you need. You act upon it and then you check whether it has worked. And then you do the deed or act according to um, the controlled experiment that you did. It is as if, let's take dancing, for example. You have recently learned a new move. Now, first, you need to try it out
Yep.
when it's time to learn. And then you build up towards the actual show. But it takes patience. And it is to be expected or within the realm of reason to say, if my partner fucks up, if I fuck up, if someone else fucks up, trips over and hits me, or just even, God forbid, disturbs my dance, I need to still be okay with it because, as Michael Singer states, I am the observer of my experience. And in that, you start to realize, wait a minute, that's exactly what happens when I act as a professional. I take my job seriously, but I do not take it personal.
Yes.
And there's where you start to see, oh, I I myself am not going to be affected on whether the client, the prospect, the user is speaking to me on whatever issue. I will not be affected because I deliberately choose to observe first instead of getting absolutely involved with what's happening.
Hmm.
It's like I'm studying the music that's being created in the den and the dire. When the music is being created, I'm observing how the music moves, this rhythm. And just like in
Right.
fighting, I need to feel the rhythm and the vibe of my opponent and then strike on the timing. Not on the timing of my opponent, on the timing where it's weak. And it's the same thing when consulting. It's the same thing when doing a diagnostic session. Diagnostic session being the first time you meet a prospect and you want to turn them into a client, you have to do a diagnosis to see whether one, the problem is something you could truly solve, and two, whether he's the proper client. Can he pay? Is he coachable, etc. But let's assume you're a consultant working for a firm, whatever the firm may be. Even if it's not coachable, the problem can still be solved. It just means you need to have more patience and either draw out the coachability or wait until it becomes the time to strike. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same with business, the same with hunting, it's the same with everything. And now, why is patience so important? Well, it's the only way you can do your job. But if I am to show patience, want to be more pragmatic with it. There is a time and moment that you need to stop being patient and simply either take action or walk away. Now you can easily do this with time blocks. You can easily do this with, you know, what is your own merit for patience? And usually I like to use the tool of time. Let's say within 45 minutes, we need to have at the very least a range of answers so we can start.
Yeah.
Because that's at least better than having unlimited answers, which is useless if I want to get work done.
You do have to set some constraints, right? Like we discussed
Exactly.
this earlier in the week around flow, because if you don't have some constraints, then it's just it spins out into endlessness.
Exactly. And
Uh,
thus, in fights, you usually use references, frameworks to defeat an opponent, be it moves, be it move sets, whatever. Now, the use of frame, be it mental frame, be it physical frame, whatever, is purely meant as a tool to help induce patience for a form of taking away the stress of it.
right.
Let's say if I am to use a certain script to truly draw out what the answer is, what the true answer is to the problem. Let's say I'm designing an information management dashboard so that the sales manager can see how many sales are being made and at the end of the day, what truly is being made by the company on that day. So that both sales and finance can do a quick comparison like, okay, clearly we expect a certain ratio, but the ratio isn't that beneficial at the moment. What can we do? Because apparently these clients aren't paying. But in order to listen in to what he needs to use, not wants to use, needs to use, I need to hear both the side of sales and finance, and often they're the completely opposite. And as I begin to interview, or as the interview continues, I need to hold into account the different aspects of such a person, being from the work that he does to the way he's being judged by the management team, and of course the people that are paying him to do his job. You see what I mean? Because that usually influences the way that he views his own team and the way that he views my product. Like, sure, this is a pen. This is a pen. But this pen means I can either use it to write things down so that. And it's in the so that I can find the reasoning behind his behavior. Because yeah, sure, I can make a very professional consultancy tool, consultancy product. But if I don't understand why he's using it, and really delve in deep into the why, and have the actual patience for that, I am going to have to return on a later date to do the work again. And it's better to have patience in it then and there, get 75% of the answers so that I can deliver 75% of the work so that they can at least start.
Because what you're doing essentially, right, is the patience is a more efficient way of doing the work instead of doing double work. Because it's very easy to start doing things to get things done versus taking the time to make sure everything that you do is going to be right. And the patience gives you that patience to go through the process of planning everything correctly. So you do take the time to listen to your customers. You do take the time to get the feedback. And you do take the time to get to know them. You have that level of patience to make sure that what you're delivering to them is correct, that it's on code, that it's specifically designed to their needs, because you are patient about that process. Is that correct?
Very correct. Very correct. I mean, patience is still nothing but a tool. And what I like to do is use the idea of paying a
the perfect example of the patience is I thought I had an idea what you were saying, but I just waited and I let you speak on it as much as you possibly wanted to before I said, so what you're saying is this. And you were like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because I had the patience to let you express yourself. And I think that it's very challenging in this day and age to keep your focus enough to hold your patience. And I think that things like meditation and stuff like that are absolutely critical because it keeps you training that mental muscle. Because we live in a society that trains you to be impatient, trains you to be unfocused, it trains you to be distracted and fear-based. And you've got so many things that our society has ingrained in our just the way we live our lives that you have to actively make and measure against to increase against it, right? It's easy to be sedentary. That physical ability, society's become so easy, we have to put work in to be physically strong. We didn't used to. We're just having to survive made us that way. Now you can survive without ever having to do anything physical in your life. So you have to put an effort in. But it comes in the same way as that ability to have that patience, that ability to have that focus. You've got to put an effort in to train it because you can get away with not doing it. You won't have a great life, but you'll survive. And that base level of survival is where everyone's being dragged down to just the bare minimum, as opposed society's not focused on building us into our best versions. Nothing about our culture is at the moment. Nothing about it. It's all based on a lowest common denominator survival level of achievement. It's quite sad and pathetic. But speaking of patience, we're aiming for those 30 minutes and we're not hitting it. But I've got a few meetings. I've got going out this evening and we've got there's a fight and a few other things planned for the rest of the day. So there's a lot on the clock. In summary, it
would simply be, again, with a simply, patience is a tool for your success. It should be used to delve deeper into getting answers, and it should be used to, get to learn your own self a bit more. Be okay is basically learning to be okay with not being okay. And you need to have patience for that. That's the literal definitions. I'm demonstrating patience when a child is screaming in my ear, you know? I'm not okay with it, but I understand that I cannot scream back because it's not part of my character. A hero is patient with his own situation because he knows the day will come where I'll be called upon. And I just need to focus on the task at hand, being training for the dragon, beating the shit out of a dragon, negotiation for getting paid for killing the dragon, because I'm not going to do this for free. And whatever situation you may find yourself, whatever pains that will ail you, obstacles become the way for a reason. Thus, pain becomes profit to the right use, to the right tools. Pete, what are your outtakes?
Well, look, two last things, right? Finish on a strong note. Talking about our stoic virtues, patience is self-discipline. That is the virtue it stands for, right? So that's where we're focused on through this discussion. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave everyone with a poem, because patience is a virtue. Find it if you can. Never in a woman, seldom in a man.
I get it. That's good, man. And on that note, this has been the Hero Podcast 64. My name is Ryan G from Aligned Data Strategy with our co-host, the real Pete Kirkwood, your success maker, your kingmaker, your empire builder. I wish you a fantastic life. May your life never be the same. Every day and every way, your life is getting better and better. And of course, be the best. Fuck the rest. Good morning, good evening, good night. Till the next time.
Yes.